One of those fantastic times. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Tim, guess what? You're on mute.
I'm always on mute because, people don't want to listen to me anyways.
I don't know. I've heard fantastic things you talk about. Today, you were just talking about CPCSD, right?
Oh, yeah, because we definitely need more acronyms, right?
But this one is a super, super duper important. I heard that Canada is changing things up and reflecting on the CMMC US. Tim, you were talking about that today, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of scuttlebutt on LinkedIn these days, at least especially the last week or so around Brian CMMC 3.0 and the new Canadian cybersecurity certification for defense contractors, and looking at how that relates to CMMC. I've been talking a lot about over the last, probably since about September, about CMMC when they came out with revision 3. And our good friends at Summit 7 brought the CIO on over there and talked about, if we're just starting CMMC, should we start with revision 2? Should we start with revision 3? And I kind of an advocate of starting with revision 3, which is, I know it's outside the norm, but by the time you end up becoming assessed 18 to 24 months down the road, revision 3 will most likely be in effect. So how does that relate to Canada? Well, you guys will have to follow revision 3 if you're in the contracting world, in the defense space, up in the Canucks area. So keep that in mind. There's a bunch of stuff around CMMC in the new Canadian cybersecurity certificate for defense suppliers to our friends in the north, or should I say to the next state? Yeah, sorry, we're not going there. But yeah, CMMC version 3.0 is the big buzzword right around LinkedIn these days. So, yeah.
That is fantastic. I'm very excited. I know the Canadians will be excited to start seeing compliance as a pusher for the SMB. We definitely understand that security is paramount. So super stoked for that. Thank you, everyone who's joined us today for our presentation. We're going to be talking a lot about assessments today in our webinar. First, I'd love to introduce Tim. Could you take a second to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I should probably do this, I suppose, right? Because this is kind of what we're supposed to do. Good afternoon, everybody. Tim Golden, founder and CEO of Compliance Scorecard, where we help keep your risk in check. Today, I am wearing I'm not actually wearing it. I should probably go find it. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about on the Connect Secure side. Our good friend Ryan, the VP over there of Education and Channel for Connect Secure, had a last minute change and couldn't be with us. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit about approaching this subject from the Connect Secure side. For those of you that don't know, Connect Secure, vulnerability management, some compliance components, one of our sister companies. You can check them out at, I guess I'm supposed to do this too, right? So Connect Secure has a free trial, right? So you can head on over to their free trial on their website as well. And yeah, so I'm going to put the Ryan hat on today. So those are some very big shoes for me to fill. So
that is fantastic. And Brian, we've got, are you also taking over Ryan as well? Or are you just going to stick with Brian today?
I'll stick with Brian. That's hard enough some days. So I'm going to stick with myself here, and really excited to be on this one. This one's so important. And when as we dig into some of the topics, just really excited to get into more of the business impact side of it, but a little context of why I'm here talking about risk assessments today. My name is Brian Blakely, and I've spent my career sitting at really a crossroads of cybersecurity, compliance, and business strategy. Right, I've been an MSP owner, a CISO, compliance strategist, and entrepreneur, so I know firsthand the challenges, right, we face as MSPs when trying to balance things like profitability, security, compliance, keeping clients happy, right? So right now I lead the professional services at Compliance Scorecard, where I help businesses, MSPs, IT providers turn compliance and risk management from an overwhelming headache of brain damage, et cetera, into a strategic advantage. So I've worked with all sizes, uh, helping them navigate SOC 2, ISO, CMMC, HIPAA, and a lot more. So I've seen where most assessments, and that's what we're going to be excited to get in today a little bit too, is where do most assessments go off the rails? A little spoiler alert, it's usually because they focus on tools, right? MSPs love tools, blinking lights, white noise, and that's where the focus is instead of business impact. So before that, I built and sold MSPs. I've been right where you're at. Organizations build and improve security programs, led CISO peer groups to sharpen, really how we as security leaders approach risk. I've sat across the table from auditors, lawyers, executives who don't really care about firewalls and backups, right? They care about liability, they care about reputation and dollars, right? And that's exactly why we're here today, as most MSPs are great at managing IT risk, but where they struggle and where we want to help today is tying those risks, connecting the dots to business outcomes. Because at the end of the day, compliance isn't just about checking boxes, right? And security isn't just about locking things down. It's about protecting revenue, reputation, and trust. So if you've ever heard your client say, why do we need this? What's the worst can happen? I'm not a target. All those things, you're in the right place, and excited to talk about, how to make risk assessments actually work for you. And more importantly, how to make them matter to your clients.
Love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. I keep clicking the wrong button and getting the wrong layout. I'll get this right once. This is not my first time, I swear.
So thank you, everyone who's joining us today. We're super excited for our conversation. We are monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, any feedback, you really have anything about risk assessments that you want to know, please take a second to throw that information in the chat. And so right now, first, let's just kick this off. Tim, what is a risk assessment in the first place?
I don't know. So I think, as Brian alluded to, the tool component, right? As far as like when I was first started conducting assessments, like as an MSP, I wanted to be able to, grab a widget, right? And then have the widget go tell me a bunch of stuff. And so, and there are a lot of great widgets out there that can really help you. In fact, our good friends at Connect Secure just launched their M365 scanning ability to be able to identify risks in the Microsoft ecosystem. And not only do they have like the installer for finding, stuff on computers and whatnot, but now they have this Microsoft 365 scanner too, which I'm really excited to use and kind of tie that back into Compliance Scorecard to be able to identify technical risks on devices and now in the cloud as well.
Brian, risk assessments.
Yeah, and Tim hit a good point there, right? Scans, discovery tools, technical vulnerabilities, CVEs, EPSSs, all those kind of good stuff. But I really want to talk about the business side of risk assessments. Because let's be real, I look back to my MSP days and I have that engineer side of my brain, and we like to overcomplicate things and jump right to selling the scanning tools instead of solving actual business problems. So what is a risk assessment? And I try to boil this down in its simplest terms, but it's really a structured way to figure out what could go wrong, how bad could it be if it does, and what you should do about it. And it's not a checklist, right? It's about understanding the business impact of those risks. So let me just put it into MSP terms for a second. Imagine your client runs a law firm, right? Most MSPs, you tell them their firewall is outdated, okay? Right, it's old, it's a piece of junk. You need to replace it. Okay, cool. But if I'm that law firm, especially, the business partner in that law firm, I need to understand what's the real business risk. I have an old firewall, it's outdated, it's a hunk of junk, but it's still there and it's still working. So what's the real business risk? And so to communicate that, if the firewall gets breached, their client's confidential legal documents could be leaked, which could trigger regulatory fines, lawsuits, reputational damage, and cost them two things, time and money. Okay. So now instead of saying, upgrade your firewall, it's old, it's a piece of junk, you're saying, we need to protect your client's legal data because a breach could cost you millions and destroy client trust, costing you time and money, right? There's a difference in that. And so a good risk assessment, like Tim was talking about scans and technical vulnerability, but a really solid risk assessment connects the dots between those IT vulnerabilities and actual business consequences, okay? It's not about ranking threats, it's about prioritizing them based on the impact to the business, right? Business impact. So where do most of us as MSPs get this wrong? I think it's in two big ways. We focus too much on generic threats and don't translate that into the specific risks to the client's business, right? If you're giving, and I see this a lot out there in the wild, if you're giving every client the same risk assessment, you're doing it wrong. The other thing is we're hammer looking for a nail oftentimes, right? We jump straight to solutions without first defining the problem. So if you're recommending, and I know we do, right? MFA, backups, EDR, before showing the client why they need it based on their risk, right? We jump right to selling tech and not solving the business problem. So bottom line here, a risk assessment isn't about what tools do I sell, okay? It's not about adding $2 a month per user and another blinking light or another service. It's about what business problems do I need to prevent? What friction do I need to get out of the way for my clients so they can move forward faster with confidence? MSPs who get this right don't just secure networks, they secure their clients' business. And that's how you build trust, retention, and what we all love, long-term sticky revenue. So the next time we do a risk assessment, we'll talk about that here shortly, don't start with tech, start with the business impact because that's where the real value is.
It's an interesting tidbit. Before I kind of circle back to you, Brian, and what you have to say about that. Hey, Des, how do you define a risk assessment?
I love what Brian was just talking about, how the business risk. Yeah. And I think I like to look at it as educating the SMB on information that they otherwise might not know about the risk they're willing to take within their business. And if you don't know what that risk is, you don't even know what you're actually, like, you don't know what the answer to the question is if you don't even know what the question is. And so I really like the idea of step by step taking a point of view of a client's business and an SMB's business and saying, let's chat about each chance where risk lies and make sure you have an idea within your business. We talk about the doors and the windows. Does your business have doors and windows? Do you need doors and windows? And I really love the idea of managed service providers, the MSPs, having the conversation about a business risk and not necessarily just the tech work, because then you really become the point, the person in front of your SMB that they can lean on to actually have these conversations.
So what I think I heard you say was, I shouldn't be asking them if they want Anderson windows or Pella windows or double pane argon filled. I should be like, how many windows and doors do you have? And are those windows and doors protected? And did you leave them open? You have an alarm system and a big dog, but all your windows and doors are open. So, you know, I have a little anecdotal story here that I'd like to share as well. So I sat with one of our customers as an MSP years ago, and I started to interview them around, like Brian said, business stuff. And this is a conversation that kind of all ties into the entire webinar of risk to revenue, right? Brian likes to talk about, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, about, what are the revenue drivers in the business? And so it doesn't matter whether it's a 3 or 10 or 500 person organization. They all have some kind of sales function, some kind of marketing function, some kind of operational function in their business, which means there's lots of different business units when you look at any size business for that matter. And I sat with the marketing team in the, small company, probably 20 people. I sat with the marketing team and just was like, tell me how you work. Tell me what you do. Tell me the things that, oh, we make this, we make that. We use HubSpot, we use Canva, we use this, we use the, they kind of gave me the litany of not just the tools, but how they worked. Then I went and sat with the sales team, and they talked to me about the tools and the litany and the things that they do. And after a couple of conversations, I discovered they had 4 CRMs, not just one, 4 for each different business unit of where they tracked people and how they engaged and interact with people. And if I didn't have those conversations across the different business units, I may never have discovered that they're paying 4 times over. They have data in 4 different locations. Everybody had administrative access. And that business risk, I was able to save them a crap ton of money by moving them to one CRM, by consolidating that data in one place, and then putting the permissions in appropriately so that, our good friend Tim Schnur's over here in chat, insider threat or being able to take that data and leave, so if you're not having risk, or just how do you do work in the business unit of the entire organization, you may not discover 4 different CRMs with 4 different data sets, all with full-blown permission. So it isn't just about scanning, which is a great piece, because risk management has to deal with device and cloud services and vulnerabilities and all that other component. But being able to have, how the hell do you make money, and what does your little piece of the world in that business do? Ooh, wrong button again.
Yeah, Tim, and how many, with what you just shared there, Tim, and I love that, by the way, but I mean, how many vulnerability scanning tools pick up on that, right? So fellow nerds out there, like myself, introverted nerds like myself, we have to talk to people sometimes.
No.
Yeah, we have to talk to the business and stakeholders and understand that data flows like water, right? And we need to follow that bouncing ball of the data, and you can't do that with a vulnerability scanner. Understanding where a business real risks are hidden are in the data flows. Okay. So we talked a little bit about scanning, right? And what risk assessment should be in terms of connecting to business, right? Tim shared a little anecdote that's real effective, understanding where data flows are, who touches it, and then get to the blinking lights, white noise, and systems. Okay. So let's talk about how do you actually start with business impact instead of just jumping to our comfort zone, right? Which is technical controls, yes or no, and then that kind of thing. But how do we move past this? And I've got a secret. Before you even touch a securities tool, a scanning tool, or whatever it is that you're going to use, before you even say the word firewall or MFA, let's focus and try to understand what actually matters to your client's business. And this gets back to, we have to talk to people sometimes, right? As part of the deal, especially with teasing out what's important to the business. So most of us, unfortunately, when we do risk assessments, I've seen this, and I did it myself early on in my career doing risk assessment. You get a bunch of expensive people together and you start asking really technical questions on the IT stuff. Right. And then engineers and other IT people and people in the business say, well, it depends. What environment are you talking about? Which tool? And so those become very IT focused. And instead, I think it's backwards. Right. So here's a couple questions you may want to ask to get that risk conversation going with your clients, is say, what's the most critical part of your business that absolutely can't go down? People love to talk about themselves and their business, right? That will get them talking, tease out what's important. And you can ask also, what data, if it's lost or stolen or exposed, would put you out of business or get you sued? Or what regulations or client contracts dictate or mandate how you're handling security, right? And if they don't know, help them figure it out. Maybe it's patient records for a healthcare clinic, or financial data for an accounting firm, or intellectual property for a manufacturer, right? The second part, after you've asked those, important questions to tease out what's important to your client's business, you can start mapping their scans and all that great stuff, the IT risk, to those business consequences. So this is the art form of connecting the dots. So instead of saying you have an unpatched firewall, say, because your firewall is outdated, a hacker could get in or bad actor, I should say, could get in and exfiltrate or steal data or sensitive tax returns, which could lead to IRS fines, right, or lawsuits. Or because you don't have MFA in place, a phishing attack, somebody could trick one of your people into clicking something they shouldn't and give the attacker access to your client portal, right? Getting in to expose and steal confidential contracts or violate NDAs, right? So we're trying to flip that conversation. Now you're not selling security, you're protecting their business. And remember, not all risks are created equal. And I'm not talking about high EPSS or CVEs or anything like that. I'm not talking about prioritizing the risk that way, because not all of them are created equal. Not all of them will have the same impact to the business, right? Losing access, like Tim was sharing on the marketing and stuff, but losing access to maybe a shared marketing folder for a day, annoying, not ideal, but not business critical. But losing access to, like a legal case management system that contains active client cases, that could be business ending. So your job really, it's incumbent upon us, I believe, to help our clients see where they should focus first. Instead of throwing every single security control at them at once, rank their risks based on which ones have the highest business impact and tackle those first. And lastly here is and I've seen this too, I made this mistake early on, risk assessments. I thought I was paid by the page. And so you come in, or paid by the word, and you come in and it's this gigantic Excel spreadsheet or big, thick report, and you feel good about it, but it's not actionable. It's really hard it polarizes our clients when we read stuff like that, because it's worse, right? They don't know what to do. So make it actionable, right? A good risk assessment doesn't just identify risks, right? There's a lot of people and consultants and companies that can come in and say, here's all your problems, right? But give them a clear, prioritized roadmap instead of dumping a report on their desk and run, right? So here's what I think of. Here's a couple of examples. I love it when a report, especially as an executive or a stakeholder, can look at it and say, and I can say, you know what, dude, here's your top 3 risks that could cause the biggest impact. Top 3, right? Gives them 3 to focus on. And then you can say, here's how we recommend to fix them. And here's the cost and versus the financial, potential financial or reputational damage if left unaddressed. And Richard Connor wrote in here a second ago, the risk assessment, or above it, what about doing nothing, I think is on there. Something I love, Richard Connor asked it a couple questions, but I love that. And I love in my risk assessments, it's powerful to acknowledge doing nothing, because that is always an option in your client's mind, is doing nothing. But they need to realize doing nothing doesn't cost 0. There is a cost to doing nothing, and they need educated on what that impact is to their business if they do nothing. Because doing nothing in their mind is free, and you need to show in a powerful way connected to their business it's not free. So when you do start doing this stuff, your clients stop seeing you as the IT guy or IT gal, right? They start seeing you as a strategic business partner, really important to their business. So don't get stuck in the weeds of security controls and tools, right? The best ones start with business impact, right? And you're not just protecting networks, you're protecting revenue, reputation, and trust. It's a mindset. So next time you sit down to do a risk assessment, forget the tech jargon, right? Speak their language in their terms, right? Show them the business risk. And I promise you those conversations will turn into really sticky long-term client relationships, probably faster than you could say multi-factor authentication.
Yeah. Brian, I love narrowing it down to a couple of items, and I forget where I saw this. It must have been a reel or a thing or whatever, and it was about a shoe salesman, And you maybe have seen or heard the analogy. And, the person goes into the store to buy a pair of shoes. The salesperson, they look at a couple and they bring two. And when the person asks, like, oh, can I see that pair? The salesperson says, great. Which one am I taking away? Right? Giving them that option of two. Now, maybe three is a good, round number for talking about business risk and about business risk. But when you approach them with 47,000 things and 19 different pairs of shoes, not only do they get overwhelmed, they don't know what to eliminate. They don't know where to start. They don't know which shoe they might actually want. So that by narrowing it down to the top 2, 3, couple of things, you can then provide a clear roadmap. Now, we're not suggesting ignore the 47,000 pairs of shoes on the wall, but we are saying, let's eat the elephant one little bite at a time. Let's pick between the blue shoes or the green shoes. And then once we take care of the blue shoes, we can add the green and the purple and the red and the others. That way you're not overwhelming your customer with 4 million things. And I know we talked a lot about reducing this to 30 minutes, which means we got 3 minutes left. But I feel like the conversation's going really well. I did believe that Richard kind of popped up here about as a competitive advantage. Maybe we can pivot just a wee bit and talk a little bit about, we all agree risk assessments are more than just a tool, more than just a framework, and more than just a check mark. From that MSP perspective, as Richard points out here, the competitive advantage.
100%, because a risk assessment, especially when you're asking the right questions, what's going to happen, the output of that is going to be a journey that you're going to take your client on, right? And so the roadmap that comes out of the risk assessment, right, is you sitting down, holding hands with your client, saying, okay, we all agree, we understand the risk, we understand the impact of the business. Let's put this journey together. And guess what the journey is going to do? I'm going to feather in more of my security stack and tools. And guess what? You're going to understand, Mr. or Mrs. Client, the value of what I'm doing, because I've connected the dots between all this technical stuff they don't understand to how you're preserving their revenue and how you understand that you're a protector of their reputation and their own trust among their own client base. So that's where a risk assessment, especially the roadmap that comes out of it, really lays out that journey and how you as the MSP are going to engage. And then guess what you're going to do all along the way with that journey with your client? You're going to show them how you're shrinking risk to the things that matter most to them in their language. It's not, hey, we patched all your, the normal QBR reports you see every month or quarterly or whatever that says, oh, we stopped 5 bazillion threats from coming in and we patched all these systems and we have a 90% patch rate and all this other stuff. The client files that under interesting, but it's not really valuable, right? So being able to connect everything you do back to that original risk assessment, showing them how you're shrinking risk and in the areas that matter most to them, and therefore impact, you're lowering friction for them. And again, you're clearing obstacles out of your client's way so they can move forward faster with confidence. That's so important because as the MSP changes the mindset on a risk assessment and the roadmap that comes from it, you'll sell more, right? It's a force multiplier in being able to not only sell more, but get sticky. You're going to build deeper processes with your clients, right? Where you're providing certain, functions within your client's environment. Doesn't get any stickier than that. You're not a commodity anymore when you do this way.
Brian, that was absolutely fantastic. As you lose your voice, that's absolutely fantastic. I think one of my very favorite parts about it is where you started at the very beginning and then you closed it at the end, where you said that it's a business problem. And when you are going through a risk assessment with an SMB, with your clients as an MSP, you're now no longer making it a product, a sale conversation. You're making it, I care about your business and I want to take you from where you are now to where you're comfortable and educated on where your risk is and what you're actually willing to eat within your business. And then we're going to build a roadmap to get you to the point where you're completely comfortable, where the business risk doesn't keep you up at night. Fantastic. Definitely. Tim, final thoughts.
Yeah, so risk assessments are way more than Tim's brain of what's the framework, what's the checklist, black, white, red, green, go, yes, no, maybe, because that's the world I've lived in for years, is pick a framework, do the checklist, yes, no, maybe, and then give them 10,000 things to look at. It's way more than that, right? It's, as Brian alluded to, it's a business conversation. Des, you summed it up really well with understanding we aren't here to sell you a product and a tool and a service. We are here to help you understand your business and reduce that risk within that business. And as an MSP, you are best positioned to reduce that risk while doubling your own revenue, while increasing your own profitability as an MSP. Tools and technology can help you do that. Tools like Connect Secure and Compliance Scorecard can help you take that work, do that work at scale, as long as you're selling them a service. You just happen to have products to help you do that work more efficiently, faster, less expensive, and do it at scale.
Ryan, final thoughts?
Yeah, nothing really net new to add other than a takeaway is, yes, there's scanning tools. Yes, there's a lot of great automation to get a lot of stuff about vulnerabilities and weaknesses within a client environment. The goal, though, is connecting all of those IT-related risks back to business impact. That's the discussion with the client, not the vulnerability scan, not CVs, EPSSs, and all those other TLAs and stuff. It's having the conversation about, hey, these risks could create this potential impact and business impact, and I care. Like Des summed it up really well, right? Is I care about you, I care about your business, and here's where we need to focus, where we need to shrink risk in the areas that it matters most to you, Mr. or Mrs. Client.
And with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. Please watch for more of our MSP thought leadership as we continue to talk about risk versus risk to revenue and how do we help all of you use compliance to help grow your business.
Thanks, everybody. Days. Thanks for facilitating. We all have a bunch of travel coming up. We will be back in April with a whole new format and a whole new thing. So stay tuned. Do the like and the subscribe, and that. Have a good rest of your week, everybody.
Cheers.
Subscribe now.